Hey guys, I was fighting Vicar Amelia today, and I just felt something upon me, and I realized it was a sneeze, and I promise it wasn't actually Vicar Amelia spanking me this entire time. I realized I've played this game for a sickening amount of time, and I've never dedicated a video to it, and that didn't sit right in my head, so I decided I'm going to make one where I just review some of my favorite bosses, and why I include those clips into videos of me explaining things. But yeah, I think we'll get onto it right away. With that out of the way, I think we can get started on some of my favorite bosses, and I'll probably implement some lore bits to explain some things I like about them. But other than that, let's get started. If you knew me, you knew this one was coming. Kaz has been my favorite boss fight ever since I uploaded that video of him, which is one of the first times I ever beat him. Which is weird, but it's actually because he's my favorite to learn and to recognize, because that tactic of just sprinting towards him usually is lucrative with a backstab, which is what I tried to get in this shot here. And while this boss does have things that annoy me, which are usually subtly wrong things when you get hit when you parry, like right there. As annoying as that gets, it usually makes sense why that happens. Usually it's an attack that's just a long swoop and you got lucky that you parried it. But a lot of bosses have that where it's just conventional attacks where they just hit you through your parry. And you have to be lucky enough to still be standing in order to get the visceral. The Orphan of Kaz is a boss in the fishing hamlet, which is a pretty difficult area, but I still find it pretty fun to get through, especially when you have friends. Because a lot of this game turns trivial if you have a partner with you, but a lot of it is just blind fun as you both go through a hard, berserk-like world. I guess bullets don't make those explode anymore. He grabbed me. He's going to eat me.
He puked you back up.
No, on my screen, he actually just fucking ate me.
Okay, he's swallowed you.
Yes, if you don't die, if you don't survive that grab, he just fucking gulp and you're gone.
Well, it looked like he was just eating his broccoli for the fucking day.
Kaz fights you because it was the hunters that killed his mom, or so I'm told through lore supplements. Because Lady Maria and a few people at Bergenworth were like, hey, let's beat up a god, and it turns out you can. Despite all of this, and probably how painful it is to watch me struggle to fight against his second phase, it actually still is my favorite boss fight because of the fact that of how much difficulty he gave me when I first played the game. I was actually, thrilled when I got beat so many times. It was never a dull moment. If you did what I did, in which I actually platinumed the game before I ever had the DLC, then you actually feel like it's another master fighting you. Someone equally threat, someone who's equally as ferocious, someone who needs to fight. Someone who needs to kill for just as much reason as you do, and that is why he was always my favorite fight. He is a DLC boss, so he's not really part of the original game, but I do have original game bosses that I love, and one of them is actually still technically a final boss, so we'll get to that immediately. I'm probably going to get a little pushback for this being my second favorite boss, but Mirgo's Wetners definitely deserves that title, in my opinion. Because, first of all, it's a god with feathers, and it doesn't have a face. That already has an awesome description. And it's a nurse for an infant god. If that doesn't sound badass, I don't know what does. Mirgo's Wetners to me always seemed like the Grim Reaper. Like a synonymous figure with death, or maybe fear, with the black cloak, wings, and the sickles. And I think the game actually wants you to think that, because throughout the fight you hear a music box in the soundtrack, and you can actually hear that in the beginning game. You can get it in Yarnum, which I think is actually supposed to say that this thing is never actually that far away. A lot of the time, I don't really think this boss is hard, necessarily. I mean, with this combination of Eileen's swords and a Beast Blood pellet, you can really just shred it within, 4 hits once your Beast Blood is full. It was just the feeling I got when I first met Marigold's Wetners that actually makes me love it to this day, because seeing just the kennel for the baby get consumed by this winged god made me feel this type of anxious that I had never experienced in my life at the time. Third on the list is probably Lady Maria. And I give that same thing for Cause. It was just the sheer amount of difficulty that this fight actually gave me the first time I played it. This was the only, like, genuine wall I faced when I actually downloaded the DLC and didn't fight Lawrence at first. Lady Maria actually was a challenge to me, and many people say she's actually easy, which really, really bugged me. And I actually watched one of my friends beat her first try, so I felt like robbed of my sanity when I couldn't beat her after 11 tries, despite the fact that I was like max level already. Lady Maria, however, can be beaten pretty easily if you just have the trigger finger faster than a cannon, which I don't, which is why I get stabbed and shot a lot. But the thing is that third phase, there's something there that completely ruins that. Second phase, she stabs herself and coats her swords in her own blood, which is a pretty rad and metal way to fight. But the thing is, she now has an effect that almost nullifies the effect of trying to get viscerals on her. Second phase, she puts blood on her swords, which makes her swords longer and have an effect on them. Most of the time, you don't actually get hit by her sword, but the blood spurts that come out of it because she's swinging her sword so much. And it's a big pain in the ass when you get a visceral and afterward the blood shows up to actually hit you. And that has happened to me countless times. And in third phase, she gets fire, which actually hits you twice as much as the blood does, which makes it twice as much as a pain in the ass. Which makes it where Lady Maria of Thee is more dangerous than Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower.
Oh. Oh. Buy me a second. Thank you. Good job. Good shit.
Personally, I don't care if this gets pushed back because the Moon Presence has been one of my favorite boss fights ever since I read about it or started playing Bloodborne even. Because the Moon Presence has so much going for it, but it just doesn't show it in the actual game that it's kind of sad. Because supposedly there's a second phase or a different version of it that is only available in a broken Thumerian dungeon. As you can see, I'm more likely fighting the doorway than I am the boss. But it changes forms, and I think what it does is that its head kind of changes and its tentacles get bigger, and then its body kind of disappears, and then its hands and tentacles remain, and that has a giant gaping hole in its chest. And this, to me, looks way more like an eldritch being, way more than this actually does. Because to me, this looks like something that was born in blood, or maybe a deity of blood. Because it just looks like it slapped a bunch of ribs on it and has tentacles for a head. Which is an awesome design, don't get me wrong, but I just think that's what it is. All in all, I think if they had kept the third phase in this fight, it wouldn't actually have done very good, because Gehrman is technically the first phase to this boss fight, which makes it actually really difficult, but Moon Presence, or Flora, as some people think her name is, actually turns out to be really easy and is pretty much weak to anything that feels bad. So it just to me turns down the Lovecraft vibe a little bit and puts it into a more like you're a badass vibe, which I love. Don't get me wrong, and you have to do certain things in order to kill the Lovecraft god. But I just find it weird that it's really weak. Follow me, man.
Hold on, I'm finishing my V-neck of pizza.
You're. He said, "I'm finishing my V-neck pizza." I said that to my medical term teacher the other day. She was telling a story about how she had to bathe like this really fucking fat dude, she said, "Your shirt." Yeah, she paused, and I go, "That's got to be a king size bitch."
This slice of Supreme, man, it's going down smooth, but it's like trying to eat a whole pair of Rosie O'Donnell's underwear. Got this whole fucking pillowcase of pizza. Seriously, I could wrap this thing around my arm and use it to protect me from zombie bites. Chum, I'm sitting here begging for a piece. It'd be like throwing a whole fucking rolled up newspaper at her.
Are you cold? Oh, good hunter.